Hello and welcome to a special leadership series that we're running here on People, Politics and Planet. I'm your host, Joanne Roberts. I'm also interim leader of the Green Party of Canada. Now, as many of you know, the Green Party is in the midst of a leadership contest right now. 9 people are seeking the leadership, which was left vacant when Elizabeth May stepped down in November after 14 years as leader. We're fortunate she has stayed on as an MP and is serving as parliamentary leader. Now, here on People, Politics and Planet, we're doing interviews with each of the 9 contestants, so you have a chance to get to know them better. Today, I'm having a conversation with Glen Murray. Now, Glen is one of the very few contestants in this race who's has electoral experience. He was first elected as a city councillor in Winnipeg and then served as the city's mayor from 1998 to 2004. And he was the first openly gay mayor to be elected in North America. He went on to serve as a member of the Ontario Liberal Party. He served as Minister of Transport and Minister of Environment in the McGuinty and the Wynne government. He resigned in 2017 and decided not to run in 2018. So let's find out why he's come back to politics. Hello, Glen.
Hey, Joanne, how are you doing?
It's good to see you. What I didn't mention there is you went on then to serve as executive director at the Pembina Institute.
Right.
It is a good question. I mean, after serving at the municipal order of government and the provincial order of government, what made you decide you wanted to get into federal politics?
Well, I have been involved in federal politics, actually, in a very unusual kind of way. I was appointed by Prime Minister Martin to be chair of the National Roundtable on the Environment and the Economy. And I chaired the plenary, and that is a national body established by Brian Mulroney when he was Prime Minister. That is half CEOs of companies. Steve Williams from Suncor was on there, Audrey McLaughlin, former leader, major Mark Jacquard, major environmentalist economists. And our job as a group was to write policy, not just for the Prime Minister, who I directly reported to, but for business and government and the NGO sector together. So it was an integrative process. And then I was one of the only Liberals not fired by Stephen Harper, much to my surprise. So I continued on under the Harper administration for a number of years. And that was a great learning experience because I was working with ministers, members of parliament. I was an advisor directly to the Prime Minister, and I was working with some of the country's leading folks involved in the climate change and environmental conversation at that time and the economic conversation. So that was very exciting. And so for me, it's sort of like going back into the federal scene rather than sort of being completely new to it.
Now, given your connection to the Liberal government federally, I mean, you say you served on during the Harper years, but then provincially being a Liberal, why Green?
Well, and when my youth, for a long time, I was a Democrat, actually. And then in my municipal years, because those parties that I had associations with in the center and the left had decided gay people could not get elected, I really found myself as an independent intentionally and said, look, and so I think there's been people who know me well know that there's a number of things that have driven my political career. One is a social justice agenda for human equality, both in human rights as a gay person who faced horrible discrimination and violence in my life, and working as a street-involved outreach worker. I saw the perils of Indigenous people, worked with some of the people most marginalized in our city. So that, and with that came an interest in economics of how do you get people out of poverty. So everything I've done in my life has been one track, and the universal income in Ontario under Kathleen Wynne is very similar in its architectural design to our guaranteed livable income. And we're the only party federally, and the Wynne government was the only party provincially that actually argued for things. Action on climate change, deep reductions, getting rid of Great Lakes protection, circular economy legislation in Ontario. When I left the Ontario Liberals, I looked around, who else embraces those kinds of policies? And that's what I did as mayor. So as a mayor, I fought for those things. As a provincial minister, I fought for those things. So it was just sort of logical. And so many of my staff and friends had moved to the Green Party. I said, okay, so at this point in my life, I really want to make a difference. The only party that really wants to make a difference is the Green Party. I sort of just woke up one morning and realized it was like coming out as gay. I came out as a Green. I realized it was my little secret all along, and I finally was out, and I felt very good about it. So that's how it sort of happened, yeah.
Well, so from listening to you describe that, it has been policy that has driven you in all of your sort of political activity,
Right.
that you've been not so much partisan politics, but politics.
Yeah, and it's also just that politics changes. I mean,
Right.
the current leadership of the Ontario Liberal Party are people who I generally disagreed with. And because it was a big party and it was very hard to get, the Great Lakes Protection Act and protection for grassy narrows and get rid of systemic neotoxic pesticides. The Liberal Party is not the Green Party. I had a very green leader in Kathleen Wynne, who had my back. But, I don't think I'd win those battles in that party today. And I think most of us who have become Greens have landed here because we really thought maybe we should support a party that's got a greater chance of winning an election, because these things are so important. And then when you try it, and God knows I tried, and you exhaust yourself in those kinds of situations, and it's hard being a Green in a non-Green party, you realize that it just doesn't work, and time is running out. And I think, all the Greens I've met, I've hardly met a Green who hasn't told me in the last 10 or 20 years they weren't active in another party, and everyone tells their journey from wherever they were to the Green Party. And our challenge right now, I think, and one of the goals that I have is, we have 22,000 members, about 6,000 or 7,000 really vote, but we have over 1 million votes. So, how do we get a couple 100,000 people to be members of the party? And then how do we have a couple more million people vote for us? Because, when 1 in 3 Canadians actively is thinking about voting Green, and we already have 1 million, we have a bigger accessible voter pool than any other party. And that's a very diverse, that's the whole diverse face of Canada right there. That's 1 in 3 Canadians. So that's a really unique opportunity for us. I think we can capitalize on, and I'm very interested in turning our voters into members, and those people who are, the 1 million who are voters into members, and turning the several million who are actively interested us into our voters. I think that's the 3-step process to getting there.
Let's talk about that then. What are your goals? If chosen leader in October, it's possible we could go to a fairly quick election, in the spring, some are saying. How do you propose to turn those voters into members, and those members then go out and find us some more members, so that we can increase the number of seats? Like, is there a practical side to that?
I think there's a whole bunch of things. First of all, starting to win seats is really important. Mm-hmm. And having policies, having policies that people can understand, having fewer messages, and ones that live in the middle, are nested in the middle of people's lives and realities. And we all know that reality has changed very dramatically in the last few months. And there's an opening for us right now, because the things that we have been talking about have greater impact on people's lives and are more important than they ever have been in Canadian history. So let's take a guaranteed livable income. We always talk about that, and this is, I think, one of the challenges. We are great on ideas. We sometimes come up a little short on how do you do it, how do you implement it. And I had a lot of people say to me, well, Glenn, yeah, guaranteed livable income, who's going to argue like that? How do you pay for it? How the heck does the federal government do it? How does it intersect with pensions and provincial social assistance?
Right.
And you guys are talking about free tuition. How do you make all of that work? So I think one of the contributions I can make to the Green Party, one of my priorities, okay, guaranteed livable income's a priority for me. It's one of the top 2 or 3 priorities I have. So how do I use this leadership race to make that happen? So I got my friends together, because I've done a lot of work in this, and I wrote, and I'll be releasing shortly, a very workable, implementable plan for a guaranteed livable income, a major expansion of the social safety net, and we'll be able to check off, free tuition, senior support, child care, raising everyone's income. I mean, it is going to be one of the most comprehensive, and it's all costed, because one of the things that I'm good at, having built budgets for a city and worked on that, it's all costed in a really cool and exciting way. So what I want to, and so I think in this, we can even use, because I see the leadership race right now as the first phase of the next federal election. I think we're heading into a federal election, and we're 4 or 5% in the polls. We really got to up our game quickly, because we've got to go in stronger. So I'm hoping that, a week from we're doing this interview with you, Joanne, and probably when this is out there, releasing that paper will have changed the conversation, and we will have actually entered as Greens into a conversation with what you can't keep extending CERB with. Where do you go next? How do you get people out of poverty? How do you get out of COVID? But more than that, how do we actually do that? And starting to put that in front of the other parties and say, why are you not doing that? This is a better solution. This is not going to increase our debt. This is balanced. This is sustainable. The same thing on climate change. You know, we're increasing greenhouse gas emissions. They're going up 15 megatons. And we have anemically pathetic Harper era targets. Well, I always use the Kyoto target. So the Kyoto targets, Ontario was at 20% almost, heading for 40% by 2030. That's where we at least need to be. We're going up, and we're not even heading for the 14% below 1990 levels. We've got to change that. It's a carbon budget, that's legislative cap, that's decline rates. And then we have the whole diversity and livability issue. Our community's safe, you know, the celebration of human diversity, being a welcoming party, tackling systemic racism and bigotry, but also putting power back in the hands of lower income people and marginalized neighborhoods, which I've done a lot of. You know, I'll just conclude by saying this. You know, when I was mayor, the police budget in Winnipeg was about 17 or 18% of the budget. Today, it's over 30%. So when people talk about defund the police, and I talk about refund community, the police budget is twice what it is. All of those vital services in Winnipeg that people rely on, that they want more money on, are greatly diminished. So for me, this isn't a radical new idea. This is actually getting back to balanced budgets. And you know, in Winnipeg, we had 21 priority neighborhoods where the priorities were run, the community policing, the housing programs were run by citizen-led community development corporations. And there's a real appetite for those things again. Toronto used to have those things under David Crombie. So, I mean, some of it is going back to the future and then taking it even further. And so I see those things as exciting. And I see, you know, even though we're not in government, even though I'm not leader, I think that we can start an exciting election campaign. And I think we can even, on guaranteed livable income, by being really smart and strategic in this leadership race, we can make that issue not just our issue, but create a proposal that would be very difficult for other parties not to embrace. So I'm excited, but by just being able to be a change agent, by just being a candidate.
So, you know, it's obvious when you talk about policy like that, that your political experience comes to play. But some would say there's a downside to that too. You also come with political baggage. How do you feel about that?
Of course you do. And how do you not?
Well, I couldn't not ask you that.
I mean, I've been successful because of all the great mistakes I've made in my life and the things I've screwed up. And some of those were painful. We're talking a lot about, but I also had brilliant successes. You know, I rebuilt the downtown. The vacancy rate when I was mayor in the Exchange District was over 60%. When I left, it was 7%. You know, I cut the debt in half. I cut taxes by about 8.4%. But I also grew the city budget. I redesigned the entire revenue stream, made it more favorable. It grew the capacity of my city, worked to get an arena built that brought the Jets back, got the Human Rights Museum built, brought the waterfront, did the New Deal for Cities as chair. I got elected 4 times by the 22 mayors of the large city. You imagine 22 mayors of big cities. We all think we're the most important person in the room a lot of the time. So to get elected, to get chosen constantly, and to be a really effective negotiator and part of municipalities, how many people in Canada have gotten elected repeatedly by large margins on their own bootstrap with no party support in one part of the country, and then move to, of all places, the New York of Canada. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And then get invited to be part of a political party leadership, taken out as CEO of the Canadian Urban Institute, and being asked by the Premier to run, winning in what was a competitive NDP Liberal constituency, and then winning in my last election by the largest plurality with the support of some of my opponents. I mean, Mark Day, who was the Green Party candidate against me, is working with me on my campaign right now. So he always teases me, "I knew you were Green all along. I always knew." So that's remarkable. And to be an out gay man through a history of time when there were almost none of us in politics, and breaking those barriers, and then working on so much. Canadians, Rainbow Railroad, which I built out of my living room with some of my friends, which gets gays and lesbian transgender people out of countries where they're being killed. Very proud in 2012 with Sherry DeNova and Yasser Naqvi worked to get the first protections on gender expression and gender identity in the Human Rights Charter. 14 years old, established a gay lesbian group at the Downtown Y. Co-chaired the Human Rights Campaign here for sexual orientation, the Human Rights Charter, and disability rights. Done all kinds of work on getting land treaty entitlement settlements for First Nations in cities, Winnipeg and Saskatoon, big breakthroughs. Got to have an Indigenous name for the work I did with that, Ishkanishkan, which in Cree means one who leads, which actually means one who brings people together, which I think is about the most green especially with my experiences in the Green Party. I think the real job of leadership is one who brings people together, Joanne. And as the interim leader, you probably,
I would
think you
agree with
probably
that.
appreciate maybe that's the job description,
Yes,
because that's what you spend most of your time together. And it's the Cree word for leadership, which I think is delightful. And I had an elder who advised me through the entire time I was mayor to meet with, and he always said, we always talked about appropriating culture. So I turned down all these names because you get a lot of things. And when one of the women who was a Cree elders came in and said, you should do this, I said to her, no, I have an elder and I don't, and then, but she was she'd already talked to Art, and Art phoned me at home that night and said, you better take that name. And I said, but Art, you told me not to do that. He said, no, this is a totally different thing. This is the real deal. And that to me is I do giveaways, and I practice those traditions around my birthday. And that affected my politics, the idea of everything is sacred. We make decisions for 7 generations. What I learned in Winnipeg working with the Indigenous community here was a whole new politic, a whole new philosophy, a whole new spirituality. And it is really grounds me, and it grounds me to confront the hate that I face as a gay man, the violence I face, and the terrible things that so many of my colleagues are facing right now. You know, Anna May and Miriam, you know, and many of them, Amida have faced some really difficult issues. I have great empathy for that, because I think that's been part of all of our lived experience. And at certain points in history, they're more acute for different communities. And Black Lives Matter, obviously for Black people particularly, for non-binary people, this is an acute, pivotal moment. But we also have some hope, because many of us have been on this journey and been at different types of intersections in history where we've seen change happen. So I think that we have to use the power that all of us have had to create change, to support each other, and not see ourselves as running against each other in this race. I don't see these as my competitors. I see them as my allies, because on October 4th, I'm hoping all 9 of us get up and work with you, the interim leader, that we're a powerful team of 10, because we're going to need everybody to make this party work. And we've got to start seeing ourselves as allies and as a team, less than competitors, because we're all going to have a commitment to this party the next morning. And so that's really exciting. I mean, this is much different than a competitive election. And not all the candidates see it that way, but I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there as a team. We're getting better at being candidates.
You know, let's go back a little bit. I said this conversation was about getting to know you better. When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, my childhood, I was adopted, you know, and so I started to understand that, because that was a big thing. My mom was quite ill. Sadly, she's very ill again right now in her older years. But and I just realized that growing up that and I think that's why I fostered kids. That's why I did street work with kids. I used to go out every night at 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the morning, because I just looked as a girl. I just realized that most kids who get into care don't ever have success in life. And then when I was 11 or 12, I started to realize that I was different. I was gay, and at that time, I didn't even know what gay was. And my father, when he found out, really didn't talk to me for 3 years. So my childhood was really one of, geez, I'm really different, and I'm really lucky. Like, because, you know, most kids in my situation, wouldn't have any opportunities. Now, you know, at that time, my friends used to tease me like, yeah, if you're gay, you get to be a hairstylist, an interior designer, or a ballet dancer. I mean, it was like no one was in politics. You know, I was playing football. I was a jock. I was also a real activist, and so, you know, and then all of that, and then coming out in my teenage years, getting involved in all kinds of activism around human rights and some international issues. And then when I turned 20, AIDS was not a word, and I had just come out of this sort of euphoric coming out, feeling really good, feeling that, you know, thank God I got adopted, thank God. I mean, life is a lot about luck. And then by the time I was 30, this thing that didn't have a name when I was 20 called AIDS had killed 43 of my friends, 2 of my lovers, 2 of my men that I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And I confronted my own mortality at that point. And I was completely traumatized. My father died, all my friends died. This virus, this zoological virus, same kind of thing as coronavirus, except much more deadly, was also sexually transmitted. So it completely devastated my personal life. The expression of love was now a vector for disease. And I dropped out. I worked building a village clinic in 9 Circles Health Center, big Indigenous health center, worked on the global program of AIDS. On my 30th birthday, I went to the 43rd funeral for someone who died. And I was dealing with gay bashers. This was a time we didn't have human rights. I mean, I remember going out walking with friends. My boyfriend was attacked by gay bashers, and I bashed into the wall till he was unconscious. The police arrived, and they sat at the foot of the lane where we were attacked and watched. And it was a time of incredible trauma. I thought I was infected. I didn't think I was going to live. And I get to 30 and I finally get myself tested, I have the courage, and I realize that I'm not positive, that I'm negative, and I'm going to survive. And it's another point in my life where I said, geez, boy, I was lucky because I was the only person amongst my friends that didn't die in that epidemic. And then I said, well, I can't live my life for the things I fear and the things I'm afraid of. That's how most people seem to live their life, sadly. We get pressured into that. I got to live my life for the things that I hope for, the people I love. And it's going to be really short. Life is very short. So how do I make a difference? And one of my friends said to me, our lives are measured by the love we leave behind. So how do I instill love through my work, through my friendships, through my family, through being a dad, through being a grandparent? How do I be a good son? How do I be a good community person? How do I take care of myself? But more importantly, how do I take care of the other people I love? How do I take care of my community? And that's what my life is going to be about. And I faced some of the most difficult things. It took me a long time to be able to reestablish friendships after losing. I realized that I was pretty traumatized because I was so afraid that people were going to die when young, healthy people die around you. And so that was a real personal journey that I went through about the importance of leadership, the importance of trust and respect in human relationships, and never taking anyone for granted. Every time I say goodbye to someone, I always assume it might be the last time I see them. And that gives you a different dynamic in human relationships, which I think is important in leadership.
I have two quick questions that we'll finish with. Questions I ask every candidate. First one is about, how does your family feel about your decision to run? And that's however you define family, because every contestant defines it differently. But do you have family support?
Yeah, that's a hard question.
Yeah.
Most of my family's died. My mom's the only one left. My sister lives in Florida. Let me just put it that way. She has politics. We're not close.
We don't talk about that. No. Yeah.
So, it's really my partner and a close circle of friends I have. My close circle of friends are all working on the campaign.
Okay.
So, right, they came from, right. But that's a really hard question for me because I really didn't think I'd be in this race, because after 26 years with my partner, Rick, who's very shy, served in the Canadian military when it was very difficult to be gay in the military, now is an operating room nurse on the front lines of COVID, I thought he would say to me, there's no way I'm giving you up again, because being a leader of a party or in politics, you work 7 days a week. You do all your day job, as you know, Joanne, and then at night you have to be available to everyone, and at weekends you're on the road.
Absolutely.
So it was a really tough decision for me, having done that for a period of time, to want to go back into that, to be working 80-hour, 90-hour weeks and be away. But he said, and I thought he would say no way, but he actually said to me, you have to do this, Glen. He said, the work you've done, he said, in Ontario, the work you've done in your life, this party, this country needs someone right now who knows how to get this stuff done, who understands it. We don't have the runway left for someone to learn on the job. And he said, I will give you up for another few years to do this. And I don't see myself as the leader of the Green Party in 10 years. I see myself as a transitional, hopefully a transformative leader who can help build strong electoral infrastructure and do the organization and leadership work to get the big breakthrough we need. And when that big breakthrough happens, because we've got so much talent in leadership, I always plan my off-ramps when I get into politics. I have my list of things I want to do with the Green Party. I have some measures of success, the breakthroughs that we need to have in the next couple of years. When those are done, I intend to step aside. I think that's probably somewhere in the 5 to 10 years range, probably 5, 6, 7 years. Because and the first thing I do when you get elected leader is you start your succession planning. So I see myself as a leader who's going to grow and mentor leadership, transfer knowledge, and learn a lot with some humility from this incredible group of people that we have around us right now.
One final thing, we know how important bilingualism is in this country. How's your French?
Oui, je parle français. Je suis né à Montréal. Quand je suis jeune, je parle parfaitement bilingue. Maintenant, c'est plus difficile. C'est un défi personnel pour moi. Il faut améliorer mon français. Mais je suis bien capable de parler en français, participer dans des débats, des choses comme ça en français.
We guarantee that you'll get lots of chances to use it, and I'm sure it'll come back quickly. Glen,
thanks very much.
So much for being with us today for this.
Thanks, Joanne. And thank you so much for all the leadership and hard, heavy lifting you're doing right now. We could not be getting through this without you. I hope you realize how much and how important you are to us and how appreciative we are of the great work you're doing.
Well,
I
thank you.
don't know how you do it, my friend. It's a tough job.
Well, and one of the 9 of you is going to be taking it on. Glen Murray is indeed one of 9 contestants running to be leader of the Green Party of Canada. We will be interviewing all 9 contestants in this leadership race in both French and English. I'm Joanne Roberts. Thanks for listening to People, Politics and Planet. It is produced by the Green Party of Canada with technical assistance from JP Davidson at Pop Up Podcasting.